CS greetings, CSGOers. I'm Extremes, and this group of beautiful people here are a variety of beautiful people. Some of them make things hard, as we just heard and was missed, but that would be Barry on the far right, Mr. Anthrax. He makes things hard by showing up on.
I make things hard, man.
You always make things hard, bro. Like everywhere.
Let's use the term difficult, I think, hey guys.
Yeah, he's busy
Probably
driving.
safer.
He's busy driving. He's on his mobile phone. You can see his giant head.
But I'm not looking. I'm looking at the road.
You're looking at the road. Wait, you're playing the douche flute and driving and talking on Skype. So who's driving your car? Okay. Well, are you sure nothing's hard? Anyway.
Nothing is hard.
Okay, good. And then we've got Profeci next to him, which is well, it's a comfortable position to be. You're basically the meat in this particular sandwich.
I don't know if I like to be the meat in this particular sandwich, to be honest.
And then, of
Depends what kind
course,
bread
well, I'm going to cut you off, man, because we're in a hurry here tonight for once. And then we got Haz, who's the lettuce upon this sandwich. I'm the bun, and Anthrax is the bun as well. So.
You do have the buns, bro.
Thank you. So just to quickly explain, if our viewers don't know who we all are, I am the host of this illustrious show, and therefore I'm the most beautiful. The second most beautiful is Anthrax over there. Well, he might be the most beautiful. Do you see his magnum look there? He is the owner of Mettlestate, and we're going to be doing a preview of the Mettlestate land. So he'll be casting at Mettlestate. He's kind of organized all the details around it. He's a pretty rad guy. And then Profeci is a CSGO analyst, which and he's been on a lot of events, most recently Mega 8, and he's usually my partner in crime. And then we've got Haz, who is casting at Metal 8, and you also casted at Mega 8 along with myself.
Mettlestate and Mega 8.
Metal,
yes, yeah.
Metal 8.
Metal 8,
Yeah,
Mega State.
Yeah, no, casted Mega 8 and looking forward to doing Mettlestate as well, eh?
Yeah, well, I think everybody's pretty excited for this. There's 1 million rand on the line, sponsored by Samsung. The beautiful Koreans, love them, gotta love them. They make good food and they make good phones that don't explode.
Usually.
Yeah, I have one, so I mean, I love my S7, so and it has never exploded. I'm still here, so there's really no issues.
You're still using it? That's pretty brave, hey?
Yeah. It's not.
Why are you guys being rude about Samsung?
It's not a Galaxy Note. That's the only thing that
Why are
exploded.
you guys being rude? Don't be rude.
Okay, the question for you, Barry, is: are you talking on a Samsung right now?
Yes, actually.
Oh, you are. Okay, well, that's good.
Can you show us?
Yes.
Yeah, bend the phone so we can...
Yeah, turn the camera inside out.
Fantastic. That caused the whole Skype window to completely freak out, which was beautiful, by the way, but it seems to be living again. So let's talk about the competition. I was mentioning 1 million rand on the line, sponsored by the lovely people at Samsung, and I think that shows an amazing commitment from their side in terms of local esports. So everybody in the local CSGO scene wants to win this competition, and the guys are going to be gunning for it. So, I mean, let's just cut straight to the chase. Haz, who would you say is going to win this? Give us your top three there.
Yeah, I was thinking about this one earlier, and I think that this is probably the most closely contested event we're ever going to have had in South African history. So I think it's probably going to be a really difficult one to call. I mean, of course, the first name that comes to mind would be Bravado, but I know Energy have been putting in a lot of work in the past week and a bit. Lots of boot camping. They've all come up to Johannesburg quite early, and I think that they're going to have a lot of new things to be looking out for this event. So they're certainly going to be wanting revenge as well after Mega 8. I don't think that they would be happy with how that transpired. They think it did them justice and what they're capable of. So I think this boot camp is going to do a lot of good work for them, and I think they're going to be coming a lot harder at Bravado. And then you have Flipside, you have XTC, Damage Control, which are all extremely formidable teams as well. And then Ventus Pro, I'm excited to see how they do. So I think the top three is going to be really difficult to call, but we're probably still going to be seeing our standard Bravado, Energy, and I think the third one is going to be the real big variable.
Okay, nuts on the line, on the chopping block, ready to be sawn off. Who's the third one?
I'm going to go with XTC, just because I think that they're in the best form that they've ever been in as a roster. They've been getting some great results recently, and I think that they're going to excel with this land.
Okay, so next we'll go to Anthrax. Mr. Barry, what do you think that the top three is likely to be at the tournament?
The logical thing would be to say Bravado, Energy, and then it's going to be a toss-up between Flipside DC and XTC. I've heard that DC actually boot camped for the first time in the last.
Yeah.
They did a little mini boot camp. When we saw Energy beat Bravado in the exhibition game for Mettlestate, you take into account the two new players. Not that Energy didn't have new players. I mean, their whole team was basically new. But the simple fact is that you start to see Bravado starting to gel as a team with JT and Fady coming into the mix. But I still, as much as you can say Energy Bravado in the top two, we've seen some pretty interesting wins, particularly in the round robin stages at Mettlestate. And a guy like Kasparov, who apart from his amazing inventory, the guy can really shine on any given day for Pulse. And XTC, when Panda and Turtle start to shine, things start to happen. And win a bracket best of one, and then lose a bracket best of three. That we don't have the luxury in South Africa of having weeks to play these games. So that's why we have this particular set up for this tournament, because we have guys that are still in school, guys that are working full time, and that kind of thing. So I'm going to go Bravado, Energy, Damage Control. But as Matt said, Energy have been boot camping the whole week, and if they bring out some special stuff, Bravado could find themselves.
Because Bravado haven't been boot camping before this event. They're still going off of their Mega 8 boot camp, which was fairly recent, but Energy's is more recent, at least.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So that's it, yeah.
So thanks there, Barry. Mr. Prof, I like it. Wait, before we go to Prof, a different side of Barry we're seeing right now, which is...
Nice angle.
My left hand was getting a bit tired.
I hope you don't have a manual car, bro.
No, ESG, bro.
Anyway, Mr. Prof, what are your thoughts? Top three.
I think it's all going to come down to that best of one between Damage Control and Energy. I think, for me personally, Energy's. I think Energy up against Pulse in the first round, then it's DC Flipside. So I'm thinking DC wins and then meets Energy in the second round of the winners. I would say I'm actually going to go BVD first place, DC second, and I'm going to spring Flipside for third. I think that's
Energy not even top three. He's put his neck out on that one. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I think Energy comes. I think Energy comes fourth, but I think DC comes second. I don't know. Like I said, I've called Energy like that ex-girlfriend that strings you along forever and then just dumps you out at the end. That's what DC is. So I fully expect that to happen. But I think they have enough in the tank to maybe come second.
Dude, I don't think you've seen the size of Styles' hand. When he does give you a hiding, you get it on both bum cheeks, eh?
I can imagine.
But I mean, he's been pretty quiet, in the past 6 months or 3 months. So this will be a nice platform to make a big comeback. I mean, we, like you said, DC have been boot camping, which is for the first time in a long time. So that's exciting. So we might be seeing some new things out of DC and things that the other teams aren't going to be prepared for when they go up against them.
You say he's being quiet, but I mean, when Inson and Hellhound are on fire, and APOC, APOC is literally, as he likes to claim, the spearhead that basically guides that team. I mean, Style is doing what he does. He's a great, solid player, and you can always rely on him.
Yeah, I just feel like he's the AWPer, and sometimes they need him to come to the party a little bit more than he has been recently because they expect so much from him because he's created that expectation for himself. Maybe that's more where I'm coming from. Really high expectations of him.
Okay.
Well,
I mean, the thing with Style was that Style was always more of AWPing like when he felt it, rather than I think the dedicated AWPer, and that might have impacted the fact that like he's not as consistently good with the AWP as we've expected in previous years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, talking about DC, the fact that they are boot camping, I think that's definitely something to highlight because, again, maybe they will actually find something new. Because, I mean, what they've been doing lately, I remember them doing against me 2 years ago. So it always works. It's just, that's what they do. It's their synergy that makes them so good. Their experience of playing together. I mean, a lot of it's unspoken. I remember them trying to teach us things and us going, we don't understand it because there's no comms that actually tell us what's going on. So, it's so much as unspoken with those guys.
I need to add something here. The simple fact is, and I tell you, this will be a game changer for DC, and I've mentioned it before, is DC show way too much respect to the other teams. They allow these other teams to execute onto sites. They allow them the time. So DC are a very disciplined team. They play to the old style of, Counter-Strike, where you wait for the execute and then you counter that.
Very passive CT style.
Yes. And there's nothing wrong with that style. The simple fact is that if DC got a little bit more aggressive in their style of play, things would hold on a second. I'm about to...
Cabbages, carrots.
Did I mute it in time?
You did.
Yeah.
It was impressive.
So we got the animation, so that was great.
I want to see a GIF of
the
that.
Thing is,
Yeah.
If DC play a little bit more aggressive and counter the way some of these teams play, it's almost as though, and I've watched it against the Bravados, I've watched them against the Energies, is if they don't allow them to do what they want to do, if they just mix it up a little bit and put a little bit more spice in the way that they play, I think they could catch a lot of teams off guard.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. So we haven't really said too much about Bravado, except Matt mentioning that they haven't boot camped for this tournament, sort of trusting in their form from Mega 8. I mean, it just feels to me when I've seen them of late, every time I've seen them, they've looked a little better, which is something that's encouraging, I guess, as a South African fan. And of course, I know Barry, you're a big fan of Bravado, but
yeah, my blood will always be blue when it comes to Bravado. I mean, I spent 6 years playing for Bravado and winning DGC titles, but the simple fact of the matter is my love for esports is always going to be bigger than the memories that I created with the players that I played with in Bravado. And the fact that I did something like Mettlestate is testament to that with everybody that I've done it with. Is the simple fact is I always just want to see a good, fun, entertaining game of whatever it is that we're doing.
Well, that was pretty well said, man. Talking about Bravado, the team, however, I mean, Detrini's been on fire the last while, particularly at Mega 8. He was amazing. Seeing him in the recent casts I've done for ESL and, watching him in Mettlestate and everything, he has just been, he's been stellar. And I recall a certain Profeci saying on the panel at Mega 8 that Detrini's been disappointing up until that point and really needed to show up. And I think he was listening.
Yeah. I mean, the thing was, it's like, you're comparing Detrini to Detrini. You're not comparing Detrini to like everybody else, in the country. It's like you've seen him win entire tournaments for his team, and I mean, I'd say probably the 2-3 months, particularly the overseas trip that they did, like it looked like he'd lost a lot of confidence in himself, and the rest of the team obviously, were going through a bit of a shaky period themselves. So it just looked as though Detrini wasn't having the best of times. But I mean, then he gets to Mega 8, and I mean, I think it would be fair to say that he got to the final and was like, "Gentlemen, stand aside. I'm going to win you guys this game, because it didn't even look like Energy had a chance in that final when he started going crazy. And I mean, he had a little bit of a partner in Fady, but the thing is, if Detry is going to pitch up like that again every single day or every single game, I mean, you already have a hell of a problem on your hands before you even get to the rest of the BVD lineup.
Yeah, I think Bravado, though, I mean, if we compare them to old Bravado and what their expectations were, they were starting to compete more consistently at an international level. So this team has now got to work themselves up to that position once again. So events like this are really important for them to be getting back to that confidence so that they can actually start going overseas and competing out of South African borders once again. And I think that, this is one of those good platforms for them to figure out what sort of standard they're at and prove to themselves that they're capable of doing this. Because, of course, it's going to take time, but with their players and how well they're playing at their moment, it looks like it's going to be taking less time than more time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody agrees Bravado is the shoe-in for winning this. Of course, if you're Energy, you probably don't agree. And I think if you're an average CSGO fan, you probably really don't agree with Profeci saying Energy might come fourth. So, Prof, could you motivate that a little bit for us? Why do you think that?
I just, like, from what I've seen of Energy, now obviously the boot camp could have changed it, but from what I saw at Mega 8, they just seemed flaky under pressure. Like, as soon as they were under pressure, they sort of like didn't know what they were doing anymore, and you could see like half of the team was doing one thing and another half of the team was doing something else, and they just sort of like fell apart. DC, I think, are a little bit more they're a little bit obviously more composed, and it is a best of one. Now, in a best of one, I think DC can get to a decent enough map that they can maybe take Energy in that. Then they can knock Energy into the losers bracket and guarantee themselves, at least third. And I think Energy probably then having to run the gauntlet in losers might actually eventually knock them out. It's a hell of a run to get through a losers bracket and then make it to a final as well.
I think it's what nine games, right? In losers bracket, if you
something like that.
I think what we also need to point out here is that, when's the last time these guys all got onto stage and played against each other?
Yeah.
Masters last year.
Energy didn't, but Energy wasn't there.
Yeah.
And this will be a little bit different. There's going to be cameras up in your face. There's going to be lights. There's going to be all kinds of stuff happening at the same time. And even though Energy weren't at Masters, they were, I think last year they did go overseas, didn't they?
Yeah, they did Copenhagen Games, and I think they were at Gamers Fest, if I recall correctly, in about this time last year.
So I think, there's a lot of factors that we need to add in. So Ventus Pro, Pulse, XD, a lot of these guys haven't played on stage together for a while or ever. And that's going to play a factor. There is a big I mean, for myself, I've been there. I've been on stage, and that is a different experience to sitting at home and playing and talking to guys on TeamSpeak. There is a very different vibe around that whole thing. And all of a sudden, it's all cool, and then you look up and your mom or your best mate or your girlfriend or someone is standing there or sitting there, and it's those little telltale signs, like you just missed out on a clutch, and your girlfriend looks at you and gives you like this whimsical smile, like it's okay, but you know deep down inside that it's not okay. It is not okay. Shit just went down and you failed.
Yeah.
So there are more factors. The next thing, as you finished after your best of one, you get called up onto stage and you've got to do an interview, and in front of everyone, what happened? There's a whole bunch of factors that need to be taken into account here, and I think on any given day, any team can win.
Well, I think Ventus are the guys who showed that, right? I mean, they're there.
For sure. And Pulse.
Yeah, absolutely. What were you going to say there, Matt?
I was just saying, like, crowd factor is another really big influence. You know, like the crowd could be chanting the opposite team's name or something like that, and that's something that you just have to deal with as a player. You have to block that out and not let that get to you. And it's going to. Some of the teams, like we said, haven't been introduced to this type of thing. This is actually Energy's first LAN event with this roster. So how that's going to work out. This is Nefan's first LAN event since he's made his comeback. So there's lots of firsts happening, and that could go one of two ways. It's either going to be one of those things where people didn't see it coming and it turns out to be amazing, or it could go the opposite. So, well, I guess that goes without saying it's going to go one of two ways. But
well, yeah,
I think
just to add on that, sorry, it's like you said, someone could be chanting, you know, as much as you lose that 1v2 clutch situation or anything, and they scream for the other team, the crowd is always going to go the way of whoever pulled off an extraordinary feat in that game. So regardless, you may lose that clutch, but 2-3 rounds later, you pull off a 1v3 clutch, and the crowd's already, again, going to be in your favor. And that's something to remember for all of those players, that it's not about you as an individual failing, but what was done to make you fail or for you to be victorious.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
I think those are all characteristics that you have to have as a professional player. These are things you need to know before you go into a tournament or a game. It just needs to be, and it's new for South Africans. I mean, these aren't things we've been exposed to, so it's not something that and it's not a skill that we've harnessed as players, and now it's going to be something that we have to start getting used to. I mean, events are getting big, crowds are getting big, like Barry said, lights and cameras, and these are things that we're going to have to start adjusting to and getting used to, and hopefully they can stand the pressure.
yeah, I think it's a difficult thing to bear up under, but the nice side, I guess, is the fact that CS feels so wonderfully silky smooth and beautiful on LAN that kind of makes up for it in some ways. What Prof was mentioning about energy there, like I just want to mention, like, touch on that quickly. For me, I haven't mentioned my top three. I think Bravado are a shoe-in to win. Energy is actually a question for me as well, just to see how they, particularly in Mega 8, how they almost seem to sort of crumble when under the onslaught of Detrony. It just seemed like it was kind of like, when you pour water on a newspaper, it's like this pristine, crisp, thick piece of multiple layers of paper, and it's sort of kind of like that. That's kind of, that second map kind of felt just like a damp squib. They just got squashed in the second map, and I mean, I didn't expect that. I actually tipped them to win that tournament because I thought, wow, I mean, they did so well at the Mettlestate LAN, and of course I wanted to disagree with Carl, so I thought, let me put my money on those guys, and it didn't work out so well for me there, but and for them. I think they're really strong. They could even win this tournament, but I think whether they end up first, second, or fourth is really just going to depend on their attitude and the way they bear up under the pressure, because there is also a lot of pressure on them. I mean, they're also a bunch of players who are known to be a bit volatile. So, when you're under pressure and the relationship's a little bit volatile, and guys are quick to bite at each other, it's often a case where it'll just sort of kill the team morale, and then suddenly you can't play anymore. I mean, I've been in a team like that as well. It's not a good place to be in. The third place thing, I mean, DC should be a shoe-in, absolutely. But I casted them versus Energy in the ESEA semi-final, and Energy stomped all over them, left boot prints. So I'm kind of hoping for their sake that the boot camp has sorted out some of exactly what Barry was pointing out. The passiveness on CT side was an issue for them, and it has been for a while. It's just, to me, I guess the guys that we're not talking about is flip side.
I know that was on my tongue as well, but.
Just one quick thing. It seems as though Barry's battery is about to die, so he's going to have to leave us with his wonderful face in tow, unfortunately.
No, Barry. That's bad, man.
I'm sorry, but just before I do go, flip side with the likes. I mean, the last game I casted with flip side where they absolutely decimated. Who was it that they played? I think they played Pro. No. Was it Pro? Regardless, I mean, Goals was on fire. I've never seen Goals entry onto a site like he did in that game in the last 18 months. And I mean, if that's a sign of things to come, Flipside are a force to be reckoned with. I mean, Massacre on toe, and then and then Hack'em with that solid support role that he plays for Flipside as well. So from my perspective, I mean, if anybody is a dark horse in this tournament, it is Flipside.
Absolutely.
I love you guys.
We love you too. Hugs and kisses, Barry. All the best for the weekend, man. Kick some ass.
Yeah,
Thank you very
all
much.
the best. Man.
We'll see you guys soon. Thanks for everything, Mike. Thanks, Shaun. Matt, I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, bro. Check you then.
Cool. Cheers, man.
Cheers, Barry. Enjoy it.
Cheers, Barry. Yeah, so going back to what Barry was saying, Flipside, I believe, are actually at a gaming house for the past couple of days. They were pretty hush-hush on it, but I just saw Zero Chance tweeting that they were going to a gaming house for this week. So, once again, that's why I made the statement at the beginning of this conversation that this is probably going to be the most closely contested events that we've ever had, because all these big teams are going through such extensive boot camps and really putting in so much time before this biggest event we've ever had. It makes sense, of course, but I think we've got a real good thing to look forward to coming this weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the Energy fans are not going to like me, but for me, the simple fact of the matter is that, you know, like Flipside, even when they played Energy and they were having pretty bad internet connection that whole weekend, they did sort of solve it towards the end, but it just looked like Flipside, they could grind out rounds. And, you know, when you're getting into that, like, you need to win one round. It's 15-12 to you. You need to grind out one win. You're on a sort of a half by. I can see Flipside winning one of those kind of rounds just purely through an execute of such. Whereas Energy, when you're sitting in that kind of thing, like, how are they going to react? They haven't shown a lot of a sort of clutch factor as such. I mean, obviously, Takbok has done some work in that respect, but I just think if Energy gets onto tilt, I don't see them getting off it. And it's a similar issue that I have with BVD, although we haven't seen BVD placed under that pressure yet. Is we know when the heat gets turned up, it seems as though Energy flakes, but does BVD do the same thing? We don't know. I'd love to see if it happens this weekend. Given the form they're in, I can't actually see it happening though.
I think one of the influencing factors in that is I think maybe the Energy players could be getting a little bit more mature. Maybe the tilt is that's actually something that they are capable of working on and fixing. And I think that the 5 players in that Energy lineup have got some of the highest peak potential than any players in the country. And if they're capable of sorting out a few of those creases, then Bravado are really going to have a problem, because those guys on Angels, Cannibalistic and like you said, Flex, like you said, Takbok and Flexi as well. These guys have got crazy skills, and if they're feeling confident, they're really difficult to play against. And I think that this is an event where we could start to see something like that. After this longer boot camp, they're going to be really comfortable with each other. Domster, he's another player. Domster, for me, is one of the best players in South Africa. I really enjoy watching him play. He plays such a smooth, fine game of Counter-Strike, and he's one of those level-headed players who could be a really instrumental factor in that Energy roster when it comes to changing that mindset.
I mean, we were having that discussion, Mike, with APOC after the event, remember? And he actually made that, it was a sort of like, it was a half joke, but it raised a very big point, is that at Mega 8, at each individual stage, Domster pitched up big time. Like, I'm not, that guy was clearly the MVP of the weekend for Energy. I mean, he was even in running to be the overall MVP, given the impact he just had on his games. I think you can't really expect Takbok to pitch up for a whole tournament at this stage. He'll pitch up for a game or for a half, and if you have Domster doing his work, then Takbok will put you over the top. You have to obviously then have one of Canny or Nefon going ham. But APOC's point was that you're missing the one player on that team that should have, if not the biggest impact, certainly one of, which is Flexi. And Flexi faded completely in that final. He just was nowhere. So I think if Flexi pitches this weekend and Domster continues his current form, I think they have enough between those two to at least get them close to BVD. And then it's between either Canny or Nefon to really bring up the third. Because those are the two hardest fraggers on your team. You can't expect Domster and Fady. Sorry, yeah. You can't expect Domster and Flexi to do all of the work without at least one of Nefon or what's I'm going big.
Yeah, and they absolutely need Flexi to show up because I mean, if you think Mettlestate show match, it was really the Flexi and Kenny show. If you looked at what was happening, I mean, Flexi with the ace, I think it was on the first map as well. So and he was just
Cobble,
on Cobble, and he was just nowhere versus BVD in the actual finals of Mega 8, and I think that's kind of what they need. They need the two, as exactly as you said, the two consistent performers. There's so much skill. It's almost like a phase sort of situation from a year ago, where it's just like this huge amount of skill in one team, but because they don't all show up at the same time, and because for phase obviously the tactical plan wasn't there, and there was a communication issue, it just didn't happen. I mean, with Energy, I don't necessarily think they have a tactical issue. I mean, they're not tremendously tactical, but they don't need to be with the personnel that they have. They need to be explosive. But of course, the risk that playing that sort of style incurs is the fact that if guys aren't showing up, then you can't win. So really, they need consistency from Flexi. They know they have consistency in Domster, and exactly as Prof says, then whoever else, it's just gravy. And I mean, Kenny is probably of any player in South Africa the one who, if he has a good game, can absolutely take the game. I mean, almost like Detruni can in that sense.
Yeah.
So, but again, he's not consistent. Sorry,
I think no. Point on consistency. I think that that's pretty much one of the main defining factors between Bravado and Energy at the moment, and that's that the 5 Bravado players more consistently pitch up as a team than the 5 Energy players do, and that's exactly what you guys have been saying, that they need to start all of them performing as a unit in one game together rather than 2 or 3 people coming to the party at once, which Bravado tend to do pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with BVD is that from what we've seen at the moment, it seems like Detruni is always going to give you something. Sonic will give you something, and then I mean, at Mega 8, it was Fady until the finals. Sorry, not Fady. JT until the finals, and then Fady pitched in the final, whereas JT took a little bit of a backstage. So the first 2 are basically the engine for BVD. It's Detruni and Sonic. Those are going to be putting up numbers every single game. And then JT seems to be the one with the highest ceiling, obviously, and he's been hitting that pretty regularly. But I think it's just that the first 2 for BVD are a lot more consistent than the first 2 from Energy. Whereas, they need Flexi, who has been a bit flaky. We've seen Domster do well enough, but Domster was basically a one-man show at Mega 8, and it got them to the final, but it couldn't get any further than that.
I was surprised Domster didn't end up in Bravado.
Well, that's a different conversation entirely, but yeah, I mean, I think he's a tremendous player. Like he's kind of like the silent assassin. I mean, you don't hear from him much. He doesn't say anything on social media really. He's not one of the controversial players. He just puts his head down and sets about his work and does it well. And I think that's super valuable. I mean, you could compare him to international players who kind of like that. I mean, I guess the one I always think of is because, Prof has almost converted me into an Astralis fanboy. I'm not there yet, but I'm on the Danish Counter-Strike train, man. And geez, the fumes they're intoxicating, yeah. From that smokestack, they just sort of coming at you. I mean, Zifix is one of those like players. He's pretty quiet. He just goes about his business, but the consistency, man. I mean, today he was a god. I don't know if you guys watched.
God, man.
I am. It was. I was supposed to be working.
That pistol round was insane.
Yeah, well, I mean that's kind of like how I see Domster in a way. I mean, obviously their play styles are somewhat different, their roles are somewhat different, but it's just that ability to, no matter what, under whatever circumstance, no matter how the team is doing, drop the numbers. And I guess he's the one guy they can rely on. But let's see, maybe another guy will put up their hands. This is the biggest stage. It's R1 million. Let's see what they do.
And this is also on land. I mean, this is also on land. Energy did have their own issues, obviously. Who was it? Kenny, I think, at Mega 8 that couldn't play the first day or something because his net was down. Exactly. So, I mean, look, on land...
I think he was working, actually, was what I heard.
And he was working, whatever it was,
And then he had that nightmare of a game on the first game on Saturday as well. So, like, I think it was more... We didn't see that much from Kenny towards the end. Nefon actually did pitch in the finals, if I remember now. He did pretty well. Whereas Domster sort of sort of dropped off, but I mean, he was still putting up numbers, but Nefon was the one-man show in the final, unfortunately, and then that just didn't get them anywhere. But on LAN, everything changes. The AWPers, you're not as effective with an AWP when you're hitting with 65 ping or whatever it is. So I think we're going to see a lot of the AWPers in SA probably either steer away from the weapon or become a lot less effective. And you're really going to see who can actually handle, any. I mean, obviously, Nefon is known as a pretty vocal player. So when those guys are having a shouting match at one another, I think it's going to be a different fact when that guy's playing across the table from you rather than just in the server.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like, we haven't even seen Energy at a LAN yet, so we're making assumptions by
we haven't seen
saying
BBD
that
at LAN.
we
Let's be honest, we haven't seen
Louzada at
anybody
LAN,
at LAN.
That's true. We haven't seen anybody.
I'm talking more about like the emotional side of Energy. We haven't seen how these guys are gelling and how when the going does get tough, we haven't seen how they react, and maybe they have managed to reform. So I think we should wait and see before we start assuming that they're going to Nefon goes crazy. I mean, he went away for a while, took a bit of a sabbatical. Maybe he came back and he's managed to keep himself under better control in those situations. And if that is the case, then Energy has overcome a major obstacle in their specific way.
Well, that's a good point. Do you think he went away and traveled to Tibet and sort of climbed a mountain, found himself found himself a Buddhist monastery, like built in the 2nd century BC, and kind of went up there, learned the ways of Zen, and came back calmer and altogether more focused on Counter-Strike. I mean, it's a paradox, of course. If you're Buddhist, you're not supposed to harm anybody, but nobody said anything about pixels, right?
Fair enough.
Well, I'd be interested to see. I mean, it's gonna be. I'm super excited. I mean, Matt, you're gonna be at the event, which has got to be amazing. I mean,
doing their game first, actually, Energy.
Oh wow. So okay. Well, that's definitely one to look out for. I'm super excited for it as well because again, it's the fact that it's LAN and that makes a difference. Something I wanted to mention while Barry was still here, but of course his battery. Well, before I mention this, I just want to say it was super cool actually having him on a cell phone while driving. It was so strange, but I think it kind of actually helped the video in a way. It kind of messed a little bit with the overlays because when he left, then everything like resized. So I hope on the video it doesn't look a little bit weird how it all worked out. But it was cool. But what I wanted to mention to him is Tiny and Gmax in their article with interview with Good Luck Have Fun both mentioned Ventus as a possible team for 3rd, and I actually tweeted at them today and asked them if they were putting anything special in their douche flutes on that particular front, because it's just because in the article they mentioned they came together because of vaping and they know Barry because of vaping. So I was like, okay, well what do you got in those douche flutes, guys?
Some special sources.
I mean, I mentioned to you guys before we went live. You go first.
So I was just going to say, like, the only realistic way that Ventus comes 3rd is if they beat BVD in the best of 1 and then beat either XD or Ecstasy in the next round in the best of 1. So it certainly is possible, but I mean, I just can't see that happening. Like, Shizzy's good,
but not impossible.
Like Shizzy's good. Shizzy's not going to carry when Sonic and Detrony and Fady and just take your pick. Just pick 3 of the BVD players right now. I mean, Shizzy can do work. I don't think he's going to do work against BVD, and it's certainly not enough to actually carry, I think, to a win.
So what's that number that I said to you guys before? DGL game Sunday night. Veneration beat our friends from Ventus 16-13. Shizzy drops, I believe it was 44 kills, and they lost. So, that's a bit of a strange place to be in.
That's not going to be happening again. That's probably just one of those nights where like nothing is working, and he's just taking all the kills whenever there are kills on offer.
I don't know, dude. I made that video about him after like going and looking on their page and seeing like results like that all over it, and like I was like, what the frick is going on? Who is this guy?
But he's amazing. If Ventus doesn't work out for him, I mean, there's probably more horizons for him in South African Counter-Strike.
Indeed. Actually,
I understand.
Yeah.
From what I understand, it's actually his last event with Ventus.
Yeah, Carl mentioned that in his article. I didn't actually know that was common knowledge, because I do know about that, but I was told not to say anything, so I don't know how much I can say on that front.
it's a public article now. So
Well, yeah,
that's-
but he doesn't mention specifics. I could get in trouble for specifics.
yeah.
Give us specifics.
No, well, I mean,
everyone
apparently
likes
it's his last event.
controversy.
So.
Oh, I'm guessing
Yeah,
we'll
I mean,
all find out.
apparently it's apparently. Yeah, I mean, if it is his last event, I think whatever team does pick him up is picking up one hell of a player. But and there's a lot of I think incentive for Shizzy to do well here, because if you can prove it on LAN, then your stock rises massively. There are a lot of teams in South Africa currently looking for a player of his caliber, and certainly if he can perform against BVD, I mean, that increases your stock even further. So Shizzy's got a lot of incentive to do well here. Ventus themselves have a lot of incentive, basically 1 million incentives almost, you could say. But I think like how Shizzy does is really going to decide what kind of teams will be looking at him, because let's say Energy has a bad event here. Do they continue with this full lineup? We don't know. Obviously contracts will come into account, but like I said, there's a lot of teams looking for good players, and Shizzy is right now, if he is leaving after this event, he's essentially a Nico, just South African Nico right now.
That's I was gonna make that point as soon as you were finished speaking.
Stolen,
so you
Rex.
I sent you took my brainwaves, and anyway, yeah, that's a good point you make. He can be a little bit compared to that Nico and Miles situation, but at the same time, it works well because those other players around him in Ventus are still highly capable as well. Crucial and Enigma the man, Crick as well. So there is the potential there, and whether or not they show up, obviously, is going to be the defining factor.
Yeah, absolutely. Something I must actually mention. Sorry, I must correct myself. It was not 44 kills. It was 42. 42 and 19. How's that for a KD?
Wow.
Yeah,
What was the end score? 16-10.
16-13.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
you dropped 44 in regulation. It's like Kenny S 2014.
Dude,
What is this?
Dude, I went all the way to America and I dropped 55 in a game. But then I must admit, I just bought an account that morning and played like an unranked matchmaking against complete bots. So that doesn't really count, does it? I mean, it was literally like people running into the wall kind of level of players.
The difference is it's 44 in regulation in a losing effort.
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, that's
Losing
also...
effort is,
Well, 42, yeah, but I mean, still, that wasn't even the full round count, which is, I mean, what? So, anyway, I'd actually take it away from the Nico likening. I'd take it to Rops to keep Mouse Sports involved, because Rops is a guy who's come into Mouse Sports, amazingly skilled players, elevated their level, they're now amazing, but it's only online, never on LAN yet. So,
yeah,
therefore, kind of Shizzy, never on LAN yet. Let's see.
Shizzy played at DGC 2016.
Well, yeah, I mean, but in this particular form, no, we haven't.
Yeah, not
seen
at a tournament of this stature, that's for sure. But he's proved himself on LAN already, sort of thing. So maybe there's a bit of a difference between the two. But yeah, definitely an exciting player and one to watch going forward.
Well, the cheating accusations against Rops were such in Faceit that they had to fly him to Faceit headquarters in London, where he played on LAN for a whole day in front of the staff to prove that he's not cheating.
Oh.
And did better than his online stats.
Just shows how much faith they have in their own anti-cheat systems. The only way to do it is physically get the guy there. And
I think it was because the community was like so angry at this young Eastern European kid that was like wrecking everybody. So that was more.
He's Estonian, so I mean the only other Estonian, for those that don't know, that has done anything in esports is Puppy from XNAV and in Dota 2. I think if you go and check like the esports earnings in Estonia, it's like Puppy with
one
something
guy.
like $600,000, and the next guy's like 10,000, and it's all local lands that he's won. It's just like ridiculous. But yeah, so I mean, Rops. I mean, I suppose you could also compare Shizzy to Rops, although Rops has never played in a competitive environment until Mouse, because I mean he didn't even play with mixed teams really.
True that.
He was just known for just being utterly ridiculous in FPL.
Quite a story there, though. Let's hope we see a Shizzy story, slightly different. I tried, man. I tried to find like a mouse sports example. I failed. I have been judged and found wanting. So we'll move on from that point. And okay, so I mean, you mentioned local lands there. So this is a small local land, million rand on the line. And the other guys are also going to be hungry as somebody that Matt mentioned, which is XTC. And we haven't really spoken about them much. And I mean, I've always thought of them. I have a fondness for XTC because I used to play with them a lot, against them a lot, just because, I mean, they kind of came at the same time my team did through Open and got all the way to kind of the top 8 at DGC. So, I mean, we even sat behind them. Like, we were across from each other, and then we played each other in the playoff game in the top 8. So it was like this kind of strange relationship that continued. And I mean, I just feel fondness for them because I'm like, hey guys, we walked the same road, and I really respect what you did because you guys went further than I could. And with those guys, I've seen them as this, like, I've had hope in them, I've had trust in them, and I've been disappointed so many times in the last year. So is there hope here, guys?
I think so. They've been a roster for a long time. Minus Tianqi. Before Tianqi left, they were a team for a while, and you're right. They probably were a little bit disappointing, and people probably expected a little bit more of them. They expected more of themselves, I guess, is the most important thing. And I think they're finally starting to hit standards where they expect themselves to be. They're beating some really good teams and more consistently than they used to be. And I think that they can take a lot of confidence out of their recent results before they go into this land. They had a really successful boot camp recently as well. And I think that this is probably one of the most important events for them as a team, to finally start proving to themselves that what they've got going here with these 5 players is actually a capable roster. Because, of course, if you're staying together for such an elongated period of time and results just aren't coming your way, eventually you're going to start getting a little bit complacent and fed up. So I think the time is ripe for the XTC roster to start tasting some success.
So, Prof, for you, I wanted to hand it over to you skillfully, and then you just stood on me, man. I'm just ending this call. I kid. It's not like you can see me anyway. Like, the video's screwing out, right? Yeah. You can't see me.
Yeah.
I'm smiling permanently.
What I was going to say there is, in light of what Matt says about them doing better recently, I mean, Mega 8 was quite recent and they didn't qualify. Where do you stand on that?
My biggest concern for XTC here is the run that they're going to have to do. You're in a best of one, you're going to go up against XD. Now, we've seen Spoof come up with some pretty sneaky tactics. Depending on what map comes up there, it's just like, the problem is, I don't see XTC beating XD in a best of one, and then getting to BVD, and then beating BVD in a best of one, and then getting to winners bracket. If they make it to winners bracket, I think personally for me, I think XTC at that point would have overperformed. I think reasonably you're probably looking at about 5th to 6th for XTC here. I just think Spoof's going to have some sort of tricky thing that he's going to do in this best of one that puts XTC in the losers bracket. They'll get through the first round of that, and then they're going to meet, one of Ventus Pro or I would assume probably Energy or DC at that point. And that's just my worry. I think they're going to get a bit of a shellacking in a best of 3 against some of the top teams is my only concern. I just don't think they have enough in the tank to take those teams. Maybe if the maps work in their favor, if they get like a gimmicky map, starting T-side nuke or something, and then you can just run up a good score on the CT side. Sorry, CT side nuke, and you can run up a big score. You can maybe take a map off, but I just can't see XTC doing that much work over a full best of 3 series.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, the actual draw is pretty scary for XTC. I mean, I also got to agree with Matt on a couple of points there, just about how they've recently suddenly looked better, but as recently as a month ago, they really didn't. So let's hope that
how much can you take away from it?
Yeah, let's hope that the boot camp sorted them out. But yeah, as Prof says, the bracket is a little scary for them, and of course the guys you mentioned, the XD. that's I guess they're a dark horse in the sense that we haven't really seen much of them in terms of on broadcast aside from Mettlestate. I mean, they haven't really been on in anything else. I think they were in one ESEA game that I recall Linus casting. So,
Yeah, I think they were also only on like one of the main streams at Mega 8, and I think that was the best one that they ended up losing to Flipside, if I remember correctly,
Yeah,
on
so
train. And they did damage to Flipside.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the sample size is a little smaller than some of these other teams where we've watched them in Mettlestate, watched them in ESEA, watched them in Mega 8, kind of have a bit of a better read on them. So they could be a bit of a dark horse, as you say, with what Spoof possibly has on offer. The thing that is, I guess, the pink elephant in the room is Armor Legion Gaming, who actually beat them and then were disqualified because of one of the players having third-party software that allowed them to see through smokes. So, I mean, it wasn't even really a proper cheat. It was just enabling like tessellation or whatever it is in NVIDIA.
Ambient occlusion.
Ambient occlusion, yeah. So it had a shin in it. So yeah, you had the right shin there, but yeah, it was an unfortunate thing for them, but still, it's a little worrying to me that other teams were able to beat ALG despite this particular player, and they were not. So, I mean, it's not to cast aspersions on them, of course, because again, the sample size that I have of seeing them is not that big. But it worries me a little bit that we haven't seen that much good out of them. I guess it might work in their favor that they haven't been seen much. But, I mean, where do you guys stand on XD?
The great unknown, I guess. It's a team that I think should be doing better than their results, given who they have on their team. I mean, you got Spoof and you got Mark Moore. I mean, between those two, they should be doing work. But it's just, like I said, I think it's more the best of one aspect than any like massive amount of fragging power that they have that might account for XTC. But XD in general, I don't know. It's like, it just seems as though Mark Moore isn't putting up the numbers that we saw from him last year. Now, whether that's just a change of scenery, not working out for him type thing, but it really just does seem as though they're sort of like a middling team because they just aren't greater than the sum of their parts type thing. Like Spoof should be good, Mark Moore should be good, but I think the rest of them are either too new to the upper levels or too inexperienced, I think, to know how to deal with the kind of pressure that they'll be up against type thing. Like Mark Moore's been on stage at in the grand finals of a Masters. Spoof has
he didn't play
been around the block 3-4 times. No, he didn't play well, but I mean, the simple fact of the matter is I think they have, between those two, they have experience, whereas the other three I don't think have ever been on that stage, and I think that might be why they don't seem to be pulling it together.
Yeah.
And also, like Spoof and Mark Moore are not going to put up numbers every game. That's the problem. They need one of the other three to be that kind of person. Mark Moore can go big. And when he goes big, you're probably winning the game. But you don't want your victory condition to be if Mark Moore goes big type thing.
Yeah, I've noticed that at Mega 8 at least, Spoof seemed to be the main AWP. And Mark Moore was doing a lot more secondary AWPing or situational AWPing. And maybe that was something that he's not as used to. And when Mark Moore did have the AWP as well as Spoof, I mean, Spoof really had a great showing with the AWP. But when Mark got it as well, he was... we saw some glimpses of the good old carbon Mark Moore. And he's one of those players who plays with confidence. He doesn't let situations... Let me start again. What I mean is that he's got this ability to go into a team against go into a match against any team and just play his normal game like he has, no matter who he's playing against. So if he does come to the LAN and he starts hitting those confidence strides, as long with Blaze and King, we saw what those two are capable of when they're getting into their confidence. And maybe, although they haven't been exposed to the situation of the stage and the LAN. Maybe it'll boost their confidence. Maybe it'll, instead of making them nervous, of course, that's not the natural thing, but maybe we're not sure what's going to happen. And maybe they feed off of that situation. And we actually see XD being a bit more of a driving force than what we would have expected. If these guys are capable of listening to exactly what Spoof says, we know what he's capable of as a tactical leader, then we could start seeing some surprise games coming out of him.
So just to add to what you guys said, what I do know is that the other guys, excluding Blaze, have actually played LAN before, but they've been in sort of middling teams as opposed to the very sort of top where
this is
they're
the
at.
$1 million event.
Yeah, I mean, King was in a pretty good team in 2015. I recall as well. I'm pretty sure they played it.
It was Flipside.
Yeah.
He was in the original Flipside lineup actually long ago.
There was
I
also
think when it actually started.
ATL, which had Shaz and Sting, and I think King was in that as well, and Delinquent. So I think they've been around a little bit, but it's never been. I guess if you've been in a top 8 Masters team and a good team, and then you've been in like a team that's kind of like 9th, 10th kind of thing, it's a little different to how you're actually gonna have in terms of expectations coming into an event. And talking about that sort of team, it's probably time we mention Pulse yet again, just ever so briefly. They're guys I didn't expect to make it this far in this tournament. I mean, they haven't exactly covered themselves in a ton of glory in DGL, but they've done okay. They've done better than the likes of Veneration, and I mean they even did better than Flipside, I think, in DGL before Flipside pulled out. I mean, you guys mentioned them briefly. I think Barry actually mentioned the explosiveness and all of that. But I don't see them ending here anywhere but loss, aside from maybe Ventus being slightly worse than them.
We saw do you remember that ESL Africa game we did recently? Where I did the observing, you were casting that game.
Yeah,
and they were up against
Pro.
Wolves. And they weren't looking so good, and then all of a sudden they flipped the switch, and Kasparov was hitting some great AWP shots, and
Lishlord as well.
We got a glimpse of what that roster's actually capable of when the players have pitched. And if from the initial best of one they put energy on the back foot, then who knows what's going to happen. I get what you're coming from, but in saying that you don't see them ending anywhere except last. But we've got so many teams that are so closely contested that anything could happen. They could find themselves against an opponent that they don't expect themselves to in the lower brackets or something like that.
I mean, the biggest fault for me there is that, like you said, they're up against the Pro Wolves and they weren't looking so shaky. Do you think if you're starting to look shaky against Energy, you're going to get any sort of gap? Because I think if Energy see you look like looking sort of shaky, those are 5 players that will take you to pieces in a big hurry because they're like, guys, we can get away with this. And if they're going to keep getting away with it, I just can't see Pulse living with that kind of thing. The amount of fragging power that Energy has when they know they're better than you, I think is just, it's unreal. Like those guys will just be running into sites with absolute confidence that they can win every single fight. So Pulse, I think, needs to get off to a good start against Energy. Otherwise, I do agree. I think they're going out in the losers. I think the only team that have a realistic hope of beating in a best of 3 in the losers bracket would probably be Ventus Pro.
Or potentially XD,
otherwise,
I'd say as well, maybe. But they probably won't meet them looking at the brackets. But
yeah.
Well, something I must also just drop in here for people. Don't think I hate Pulse. I actually used to play in Pulse, so it's really not the case. I loved having that avatar on my Steam. It's beautiful, man. They're good people, and it's a good team. It's just, I kind of see this as being there's 5 teams who really stand a good chance here. Or maybe Bravado and 4 teams. I don't know if you want to call it that. And then the other 3. And I mean, anybody can, as you said, Matt, I agree with you. Anybody can upset on their day, absolutely. But if we take into account recent results, recent form, and just overall what's the season been like, they shouldn't. But again, I mean, the points of predictions is to probably get completely wrecked, which is most likely to happen. I mean, LAN is the great equalizer. This could go completely tits up for us in terms of predictions, and which would make the tournament even more exciting, which I think is pretty cool. So just to quickly sum up what we've got in terms of games, we've got in terms of the first matchup, 9:30 a.m. Bravado versus Ventus. That's on the 5th, so that's Friday. and then followed by XD XTC at 11, and then Energy Pulse 12:30, and Damage Control Flipside at 2. So I mean, go and have a look at I'll probably paste the link to the tournament in the video, guys. You can go and have a look and see the brackets. You can kind of see what Prof and myself and Hayes were talking about in terms of where the guys are likely to end up in the bracket. So, I mean, is there any final words, guys, or are we feeling good?
Yeah. The best of 5 grand final.
Oh, yeah. Are you going to cast
so
that? I want to see you mud wrestle Barry for the honor.
I
I think Barry's winning that one hands down.
What are you saying, Prof? What are you saying?
Have you seen Barry, dude? That guy's stacked.
Have you not seen me, bro? What do you mean? No, it could
Dude,
be the
a light
card.
breeze could take you on.
Shots fired. No. Yeah, best of 5 grand final, 1 map advantage for the team going through the winner brackets. So that always bodes well, and that's exciting. And hopefully we can see a situation where whoever's going up against Bravado in the grand final is capable of taking us to that 3rd, 4th, 5th map, as opposed to it being that early 2-0 sweep, which has kind of been the pattern so far.
Very much.
I mean, whoever loses the winners bracket final is also in for one hell of a day, because you play the winners bracket final, then you play losers bracket final, then you play the grand final. So that's a hell of a lot of CS for whoever loses that game. So a lot is riding on winners bracket, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for joining us, dear viewers. Love you. Hugs and kisses. And to my my fellow analysts, you guys have been officers, gentlemen, and I was gonna commend you, a little bit further, and then I realized I'd probably be straying into colonialism by invoking titles and stuff. So let's not go there. To Mr. Anthrax, who's no longer with us, dearly departed, we loved ye when ye lived, but now that ye are gone, well, screw you, buddy. I'm joking, Barry. If you watch this, I'm joking. Have a great tournament. It's going to be amazing. Really excited. Amazing work from Anthrax and the team on Mettlestate, and we're all looking forward to it, eh, guys?
Yeah,
100%.
best of luck to them, eh?
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for joining us, guys. Axe out.